Hi, greetings. I hope all is well with you. It's Pastor Harold Mawela here. Um, I only have greetings for you and love for you. We continue with Women's Month celebration. So the topic that we would like to share today is the 9 characteristics of Ruth, that Christian women can emulate. Especially in the times that we are living in. So you probably know the story. It's one of the most emotive and inspiring accounts in biblical history. The story of a woman named Ruth and also her unstoppable love. Maybe you've read the Bible book which bears Ruth's name. So often, you would recount her life's event by heart. Each scene unfolding just like the movies. So, in one dramatic scene, Ruth refuses to leave her mother-in-law, Naomi, after both women lose their husbands. Instead of returning to her family house in Moab, Ruth fastens her heart to Naomi. They journey together to Israel, where Ruth begins to gather grain for herself and Naomi in a certain field. So he meets this eligible bachelor. Here he comes now, the landowner, Boaz, spotting Ruth in his field, and he asks a servant who the young woman is. As further scene unfolds, culminating with Ruth's marrying Boaz and becoming one of the ancestors of Christ. Ruth's every action reflects her heart that she is after God. Ruth, though born an outsider to God's chosen nation, she radiated godly character traits which remain as timelessly relevant as her own life story. Some of these traits are such as faith, loyalty, and love, laying and glimmering like gold on the surface of Ruth's biography. But other character traits Ruth modeled may be a little less obvious. So let's unearth the hidden treasures of the 9 traits which are invaluable for us to emulate today. Number 1, initiative. Naomi didn't need to ask Ruth to head outside and bench her back in the sun all day. In fact, Ruth asked Naomi to let her go glean the grain. So in this way, Ruth exemplified the trait of initiative, which involves, rising to the occasion to meet a need not out of obligation, but out of love for God and also for others. So we see this trait again in Proverbs' poetic description of the virtuous woman. So a woman like Ruth, she always rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household. She's got strength and honor, and even in her clothing, she shall rejoice also in time to come. So number 2, she's got diligence. Showing initiative to begin a job is one thing. But being faithful and vigilant to do the job well is also another thing. That's where the next character trait, diligence, comes in. When we read, Colossians chapter 2, verse 23 to 24, it captures the biblical definition of diligence, arguing that whatever you do or work at it with all of your heart, as if you are working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. So it is the Lord Jesus Christ that you are serving. You're serving Jesus Christ. So interestingly, diligence appears to be one of the character traits which initially recommended Ruth to Boaz. The first time he laid his eyes on her and he asked his servant, "Who is she?" The servant reported, "She came into the field and has remained here for morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter." So yes, she had some rest. So diligent isn't the same as workaholism. Rather, by working faithfully to provide for her loved one, while leaving time to take care of herself and Naomi, Ruth exhibited the kind of biblical diligence which Proverbs chapter 12, verse 27 calls a precious possession. So number 3, perseverance. Almost anyone can start to work diligently, in short spurts. But continuing to serve God by completing even menial tasks faithfully day after day requires another character trait, which we call perseverance. Perseverance involves sticking with something for a long haul, and doing so, consistently with a high standard. So even when the going gets rough, you continue. So besides producing character, perseverance is one of the traits which the Bible promises that it will keep us, from being ineffective or unproductive, in our knowledge of God and also of Jesus Christ. 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 5 to 8. So by faithfully gleaning throughout both the barley and the wheat on the harvest, Ruth portrayed a literal picture of perseverance, which scripture mandates in Galatians chapter 6, verse 9. So let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. So we have to persevere and not give up, because there's a price for that. Number 4, gratitude. Persevering under the eastern sun, Ruth may not have seemed to possess many reasons for thankfulness. She could have said, "Wow, here I am. I've lost my husband, left my home and family, and I've become an outsider in a new country." So here we talk about stressful transitions, and if all that wasn't enough, she is also working, a back-breaking job, getting sunburned among the poorest of the poor while living with her mother-in-law. Instead, when Boaz invited Ruth to continue working in his field, she exuded extravagant, genuine gratitude, literally bowing to the ground and asking, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes, that you notice me as a foreigner?" Ruth chapter 2, verse 10. Far from showing a sense of entitlement, Ruth exhibited, the attitude. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 18 calls us to giving thanks in all circumstances. Number 5, contentment. One invaluable character trait which gratitude helps us to cultivate is contentment. According to 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 6 to 8, godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing to the earth, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will certainly be content with that. So Ruth's satisfaction to continue indefinitely with Naomi, living on the same carbohydrates day after day, illustrates the kind of contentment Paul described over 1,000 years later. So I have learned to be content in whatever circumstances I face. I know that it is. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether I'm well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all things through Christ, who gives me strength. Those were the words of Paul, a man who really struggled in his life and had a lot of pain. You can get that in Philippians chapter 4, verse 11 to 14. Number 6 is resilience. Because Christ gives us strength, we, just like Ruth, you can get up and keep going to face of life's difficulty blows. In other words, you can show the character trait of resilience. Resilience isn't always a natural human response to hardships, including losing almost everything you once knew or loved, and becoming a fully belly cutter or collector. Yet as Paul discovered, God's grace is sufficient even then, for his power is made in weakness. That's what Paul said in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9. Ruth beautifully modeled such God-given resilience, becoming one of those who lived out of God's promise, in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 30 to 31. But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles, and they shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Number 7, humility. Along with showing resilience, Ruth responds to difficult circumstances illustrate the priceless trait of humility. The Bible hints that humility involves living out a deep reconnection of our need for God. Not just thinking of ourselves more highly than we ought to, and placing others' needs ahead of our own ambitions. So Ruth's initial reaction of gratitude to Boaz and her willingness to perform millennial labor and consistency in placing Naomi's needs ahead of her own reflect this biblical view and concept of humility. So humility means reaping honor. So Luke chapter 14 verse 11 confirms that all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all those who humble themselves will be exalted. And indeed, God's faithfulness to honor Ruth's humble service is illustrated in the rewards she got out of her humility. Number 8, teachability. Part of showing humility involves seeking, hearing, following godly counsel. In other words, being teachable. Multiple verses in Proverbs highlight the relationship between teachability and wisdom. For instance, Proverbs chapter 12 verse 15 observes that the wise listen to advice, while Proverbs 19:20 says that listen to advice or listening to advice gathers wisdom. Wisdom in turn leads to blessings, happiness, honor, life, and peace. Proverbs 3:13-18. So Ruth exhibited, highly character of a high stature, reflecting the Bible. So true biblical teaching of humility, it also comes with rewards. Number 9, dependability. Naomi knew Ruth would follow her instructions, even the potentially bizarre sounding ones, to the letter, because Ruth had consistently proven herself to be reliable. So by sticking with Naomi through the lowest seasons of their lives, providing for Naomi faithfully and preserving throughout the harvest, Ruth hath shown herself to be dependable. So when we read Luke chapter 10 verse 16, it indicates that God honors in the dependability, knowing that he who is faithful in what is least is always faithful also in much, and he who is unjust in what is least is unjust also in much. So in Ruth's case, God honored her by entrusting her with even more responsibility, including descendants to raise in the ways of the Lord. So timeless, these are timeless traits. In the end, truths, we can glean from Ruth's life include the value of multiple biblical character traits which apply just as much as in the 21st century culture as we did in the ancient Middle East barley field. Of course, emulating these character traits is no magic formula, guaranteeing a life with unlimited carbohydrates, pleasant in-laws and marriage, to a barley tycoon. But like Ruth discovered a godly character or character traits, that they do ultimately produce a lasting harvest and impacting both earth and also eternity. Thank you so much. I believe you have learned something from this. May God bless you.